That means we're progressive. Thank you. And if you would be kind enough to mute yourselves, keep your eye on the waiting room, perhaps because I don't think it's wide open door. Fran says hi, she's back safely. She is giving me the grace to do this on my own, because having a mentor who's a friend is not always the same as having a friend who's a mentor. But I think one of the strong points I care about in this group is I think when a group exists with the level of persistence and quality we have under Fran's guidance, it becomes important that we exist even when she's not fully present. So for Larry to take responsibility and for me to give this a go, I think it's a compliment to all of us, and certainly to her. Most of you were here last session when I recalled the story about why I chose to leave today. And it's because I often listen to Krista Tippett on Sunday morning. And several weeks ago, her guest was Sharon Salzberg. It was so compelling that I stayed in bed to remain quiet and concentrate, which may sound oxymoronic. In any case, later Fran and I met and were taking a walk, and with great and abundant enthusiasm, we both said, "Did you listen to Sharon Salzberg this morning?" So what we're doing today does include meditation, and yet I've reframed it somewhat differently than we have for the past several months. I spent hours going through the transcript of Krista's conversation with Sharon. And I've selected about 10 minutes of key paragraphs of her voice and words to share with you. I'm going to read them quietly so that I can disguise my enthusiasm that you all know through our friendship. And I trust my voice will carry her wisdom and words. In between, I'll stop for about 3 minutes each time. During those pauses into silence, I'm going to ask you to review and reflect what you heard, or concentrate on your breathing. But I also want to add something. If during those pauses of refreshment, you wanted to make some notes, I invite you to have a paper and a pencil nearby, because the 5 pieces I'm sharing are not totally disjointed, but they have their own rhythm and intent. So if you want to get a paper and pencil, now's a good time. If not, just enjoy finding that breathing space and going back to your inner thoughts. You can always just be and breathe and be. This is not intended as a homework assignment, just a rhythm to our breathing, reflection, and years of meditation. So let's begin with a little bit of silence. And we'll probably have about 3 minutes between each segment. We practice meditation in order to cultivate a sense of agency, to understand that a range of responses is open to us. We practice to remember to breathe, to have the space in the midst of adversity to remember our values, what we care about, and to find support in our inner strength and in one another. When I started meditation, like most of us, I had a different idea of success and what it would look like and what it would be very much about, which was accumulation. Like if I could be with 2 breaths in the beginning without my mind wandering, then surely by today, I should be with 8. And then tomorrow, I should be with 15. And then eventually, my mind wouldn't wander. And I found the most unbelievable thing, that wasn't the point, that learning how to let go more gracefully was the point. Learning how to start over with some compassion for yourself instead of judging yourself so harshly, that was the point. And it's so funny because really it was like lesson 101 for me, and probably the most precious thing that I use it every day. It's still the most significant thing I've ever learned from meditation and that I use daily. We have to start over and do a course correction or pick ourselves up if we've fallen down every day. The mind is shining. It's because of visiting forces that we suffer. And there are a couple of things to that. One is that these forces are visiting: greed, hatred, jealousy, fear. They're not inherently, intrinsically who we are, but they visit. And they visit by chance a lot. They may visit nearly incessantly, but they're still only visiting. I often think the skill one learns in meditation practice is, what do you do when you open the door? And can you remember who lives here? Can you recognize, okay, this is what's visiting. It's a visitor. And if I get lost in it or overcome by it, it will cause suffering. That doesn't make me bad if it causes suffering. It's how am I going to relate to it? And so there's presence, there's balance, there's compassion, there's even hospitality that's a part of it. I mean, look at now. We're in control of nothing. It's like, wow, it's the same kind of way of being liberated. So there are these 5 states. They're called hindrances, not because they're bad to feel, but because when we get lost in them, they tend to give us tunnel vision and cut off our options and really imprison us in some way. The first is called grasping, holding on, attachment. Not attachment in the current Western psychological sense, but really clinging and almost refusing to let things or people or ourselves change. Aversion is the second one. It's anger or fear. And in the Buddhist psychology, those are considered the same mind state, just different forms. Anger being the expressive, outflowing, energized form, and fear being the held in, frozen, imploding form of striking out against what's happening and trying to declare it to be untrue. Aversion. And then there's sleepiness, which is really a kind of numbness. It's like maybe when you face a challenge, your first instinct is, I think I'll take a nap. And I'll just wrap myself in this cloak of oblivion and not have to feel much. And then there's the fourth, the energetic opposite of that, which is restlessness. It's agitation, anxiety, guilt. Interestingly enough, even worry, things like that. And then 5, the last one, is doubt. And that's really fascinating because there are some kinds of doubt which are considered just priceless. They're really important, like insisting on knowing for yourself what's true, not just believing somebody else and questioning and wondering. And then there are other kinds of doubt, which are more like what we might call cynicism. It's like not even trying to find out or look at something more deeply. You just stand aside and scoff at it, or something that's not that helpful. These are the 5 hindrances which we see again and again and again in our own minds. Teaching about living with these hindrances, seeing them, answering the door, which is a spiritual discipline and practice, because it just doesn't come naturally. It doesn't. And there's not only a kind of humility in it, but there's such a teaching, which also doesn't come naturally for many of us, about being kind to oneself. It comes down so much of the time to equanimity, which is really peace. And certainly if I heard the word equanimity long ago, I'd have thought, that's really bizarre. What does that mean? And so many times we think it means indifference, but it doesn't. It's such a huge capacity of our hearts to see what we're going through to see what others are going through, and to just have this perspective that there is change in life. And there is light in the darkness and darkness in the light. And we're not avoiding pain because some things just hurt. That's fundamental. But we're holding it in a way that is almost like when the awareness is stronger than the visitor. It's like the love is stronger than the pain. And the room we create, the environment we create, where all of this can come and go, it is built of awareness, built of love, and built of the sense of community so that we're not alone. And then we can really be with things in a very, very different way. Welcome home. Do what you would like to do to bring yourself back to your little box by stretching your eyelids. Sometimes I warm mine. or by breathing, or smiling, which seems to be pretty popular. I'm going to pause the recording. Thank you, Nancy, for sending me vibes.